Well, as winter draws in, the roads are getting more hazardous. Road Safety Week this week. So we thought we'd just remind ourselves of those extra dangers and widen out the discussion as well. One of our regular guests here at Solent, Rob Hurd, is with me, road safety consultant and the founder of the Older Drivers Forum. Also a former Hampshire police officer who spent 30 years in the force and is here to tell us how to be sort of safe on the roads. I bet you saw some sights on your journey from Hythe this morning, didn't you?
Yeah, certainly. When I left this morning, there's my car, come out to it, and it was covered in snow, I have to say. And actually, that really, like you said, is very apt, because this morning, a lot of people would just jump in their cars, drive off their driveways, hardly being able to see out their windscreens. And that's what we're really trying to encourage people to say, is give yourself that time, get out to the car 10 minutes early, start the engine, sit with the car, don't leave it running and go back inside again, because a lot of criminals are out there looking for those opportunities.
Wow, okay.
If you're leaving your car running, that could get it stolen. So make sure you stay with the vehicle, give it a good clean all the way around, give you a scraper, clean all the windscreens off, and make sure maybe put your air conditioning on to try and clear it so you don't get that foggy feeling inside the car. But make sure you completely clear not only wing mirrors, and I do think, and when I was cleaning my car this morning to come here, it was actually looking at the lights as well. So we might clean our windscreen, but think about your lights. You want to be visible for other people. You want your brake lights to be visible. So clean those off as well.
This is so interesting talking to you today, because yesterday, I covered my car up last night. I was being very, very sensible, and there was no frost. Last night, completely forgot that it was going to be really, really cold. Got out. Heavy frost, and the number of times I was late because I was sort of cleaning the car out. You get that, you mentioned that foggy bit, it's that water that you get, the condensation on the inside that you sort of forget.
Yes.
As much as you think it's clear, you then drive off and it starts coming back as well. So is that just a case, because you get distracted, don't you, then you're trying to put the heaters on and work out where the heater is for the front?
I think most cars these days have got aircon on it, and I know sometimes, yes, it does build up your fuel economy, does go down when you start using aircon, but actually good opportunity to put it on now, because otherwise you will drive that short distance down the road. Suddenly you may get that cold spot that you're going into and it just steamed up, and then all the side windows, everything is steamed up, and it will take a little time to clear. And if that does happen, don't continue drive the road, find somewhere to pull in, indicate, come to a stop, make sure it's cleared, because our visibility at this time of year is so important.
You always see somebody, though, don't you, that has basically created a porthole in their windscreen, peering out through it, but cannot see anything else around them.
And that's just, even just, we've got snow at the moment, but that's even frost. We see it. We're in the start of winter now. We are going to have a lot more frosty mornings. That's going to be a regular thing. And I know sometimes it's difficult to get out there early, a few minutes early, but really you've got to make sure you're safe. You've got to have that full visibility to see those hazards and be able to react to them.
Let's talk about when you're actually driving them. We've had many messages in this morning. A lot of them I can't repeat because I've got too much swearing in them, about the number of people driving without lights on, with inappropriate lights, driving too fast, driving and overtaking, for example. What about when we're in our vehicle? Because we tend to think, we've got a metal box around us, we're invincible.
Yeah, and I think we have a lot of people these days, modern day cars have these things called daylight running lights, which automatically will pick up. And what you'll notice, there'll be a lot of people just relying on that. They think their headlights will come on. But when we've got snow and things like we've got now, it's bright mornings, even a frosty morning, those headlights won't come on automatically. You'll have the driving lights on, but they're only the front lights, and they're only a little bit. The rear lights aren't on, and we get a lot of people driving even at night thinking their dashboard's lit up by lights, but actually their lights aren't on. So make sure you actually put your proper lights on, certainly in frosty weather, when it's starting to get dusk or early in the morning. Put the proper lights on. Don't just rely on those daylight running lights.
Because you often think, when I've got like an automatic sort of system on mine, and you think, they've come on, but actually they're only detecting the darkness, aren't they?
They are, and they're only putting on. Initially, it may have a little light telling you, and usually it's just your front light, a little side light, bright side light on, but the rear lights aren't on. And therefore people think they're visible, and that's why people think, why is that car driving with no lights on? And it's because they're running their daylight running lights.
Let's talk about actual driving then in these conditions. Obviously, Think about your braking. Think about how close you are to the vehicle in front. What else should we be doing?
Yeah, so what they say, in wet and damp conditions, okay, your stopping distance, the highway code actually tells us, is twice as long. In icy and snowy conditions, it's actually 10 times your distance to stop. So we're really saying to people, you need to be giving yourself that space. Don't drive up the vehicle in front. Even if they're going slow, be considerate that that person may be not very confident in that weather. They're not used to driving in that, so give them plenty of space, because otherwise we're getting people bunching up. Suddenly someone brakes, and in this slippery weather, easily we're going to get collisions on the road. So that's a really sensible thing to do, is just to give yourself plenty of space around you and make sure. Now, there's the other thing we could look at is tyres. You know, a lot of cars, we know the legal limit, a lot of people know, is 1.6 millimetres over 3/4 centres of the tyre. Now, actually, if you just go for that bare minimum on your tyres, at 50 miles an hour, it actually gives you 25% less stopping distance than if you actually had 3 millimetres on your tyres.
Goodness.
So actually consider thinking, should I, in the winter coming up, change my tyres? You know, even looking at these all-season tyres. I mean, I drive with all-season tyres. It means that I've got a lot more traction with the rubber that I've got from the tyres I've got. So we could consider that coming into the winter.
So this idea of winter tyres, and lots of people think, oh, it's just another way for garages to make money, but it's worth looking at.
Makes such a difference. Now, my wife's Danish and we travel to Denmark quite a lot. And when we go over there, you really can tell the difference. I've taken my normal summer tyres I've had before, been over there, got caught out. My goodness me, the car's all over the place. When I put the winter tyres on, I'm absolutely amazed the extra traction I've got.
Goodness. Rob, stay there. We're going to chat more in just a moment about all sorts of things. If you've got any questions, by the way, for Rob, any sort of myths when it comes to driving, or stuff that you've observed on the roads that you wanted to just mention, please do get in touch. You'll be with me for the next 10 minutes or so. Rob Hurd, who is he's the founder of the Older Drivers Forum. We'll touch on that, and a road safety consultant. Anything you'd like to add in to the conversation, feel free. 08000 321 333. Start your message with the word Solent, or you can give us a ring, 0808 100 3800. One thing that I found out the hard way is putting I never know what the official term is, Rob, the windscreen washer fluid stuff. Yeah. Putting that in, topped it up with water, everything froze up, schoolgirl error.
Yeah, and I think people often just put water in, you know, simple thing to do, but buy the proper stuff, really, you know, that pre-mix, or you can buy it as a concentrated, you know, and add water to get it to a certain thing. But what you want to do is make it so it's available down to minus 15 degrees centigrade. And what I would say is make sure we top it up. We're coming into that time now where we're getting that ice, we're getting that cold weather, and then we're getting the salt on the road, so the windscreen gets dirty. Yeah. We keep using it, and then it runs out, and we find we can't see, and we have to stop. So the important thing to do is make sure you keep it topped up in this weather. Okay, and
worth giving it a test as well, isn't it, once you've done all the defrosting of the windscreen?
Yeah, absolutely. And you want to make sure it's got that minus 15 degrees. It will tell you what sort of concentration you need. And a lot of the garages these days will do pre-mixed stuff that you can just pour straight in.
Dave in Milford-on-Sea. Rob Hurd, by the way, my guest in the studio, road safety expert. Dave says there are two main problems driving in snow. One, most people have no clue how to drive in those conditions. Secondly, cars nowadays are hopeless in the snow. The wheels and tyres are too wide, have too big a footprint, great for normal conditions, but useless in snow or ice. Even 4x4 winter tyres are rubbish. You only need one car to lose traction, and everything comes to a grinding halt behind you. We spend a lot of time in Germany, and between October and Easter, you must have winter tyres. We touched on this a moment ago, didn't we, Rob? Winter tyres.
Yeah, very much so. And actually, one thing about driving in these slippery conditions is if you're going to pull away, try and pull away in a higher gear. So rather than the lowest gear, what happens is that the wheels will start spinning, and if you're on snow or anything like that, will start digging in. So maybe put yourself into second, a little bit more revs, and slowly pull away on that. So always try to drive in a higher gear, and it allows more traction as well.
And if you if you brake and you do start to slide, what do you do?
Yeah, so rather than keeping your foot planted on the brake pedal, it's what we call cadence braking. So you would take your foot off, take your foot on and off. So you're almost doing like an ABS system would do. You're taking it on and off to try and get that traction as well. And then you can steer your steering wheel at the same time, move it to one direction, let it off, put it down, and it will slowly get some traction as a result of that as well. But also by using a gear, you can help the gears and the momentum of the vehicle to slow the vehicle down using your gears as well.
Right. Why aren't we taught this when we learn to drive? Because quite often you learn the hard way, don't you?
Well, I suppose we're kind of in England. These are weathers that we don't really traditionally have, unless you're up in the Highlands of Scotland and those sort of places where probably their driving instructors will train it. But for ourselves, it's not really the everyday weather. I think when you go to those Scandinavian countries with a lot of weather like this, it's part of the training that they would get.
If you've got anything to say to Rob, by the way, any questions or indeed any comments, get in touch. 08000 321 333. Start your message with the word Solent. Also wanted to talk about the vehicle's battery as well and making sure that that's healthy. How do we do that?
Yeah, so always go. I mean, you can buy your own home test centre, a thing where you can test what the battery's quality is and the ampage it's putting out. Okay. The all important thing is probably just go along to a car shop who sell part batteries, or go along to a garage, get them to test it for you, because a lot of people will come out at this time of year and they're suddenly thinking, oh, that car's turning over a little slower. Yeah. It's not starting as quickly. Now, most batteries will only last about 3 or 4 years these days.
I thought it was a lot longer than that, which is maybe why mine's making a bit of a stuttering noise at the moment.
And some people are having difficulty then, even coming to a point in this cold weather, they go to use, because we often need a little button to unlock the car, that's not working. And because the whole battery's not got enough power to do that. So therefore, really have your battery checked at this sort of weather now before it gets too worse, and actually maybe think about changing it if necessary.
And this weather affects batteries, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. The cold weather will just kill them.
Okay, I'm just learning. I'm learning so much here, Rob, thinking, yep, that's what's wrong with mine. Wiper blades as well, wanted to mention those.
Yeah, and I think this time of year, like I said, we're going to be starting a lot more. We see all the salting lorries out, a lot more grit, and therefore that's going to get flicked up onto your windscreen. And when you're using a wiper blade, which is rubber, that starts scoring them, causing them damage. So make sure, as we do, we might want to keep those regularly maintained, new wiper blades, maybe better quality ones.
Okay, we were talking right at the start of this about making sure your windscreen's clear.
Yes.
It's that age-old thing. We've all known someone that's done it and boiled the kettle and poured it on their windscreen. Yes. Don't do it.
Worst thing to do, you'll get that huge crack across the windscreen. Oof. Please just don't do that. It's the worst thing to do.
What about when your locks get frozen up as well? Because I've got a key entry to mine.
Yeah, so de-icer is quite good if you could spray it into that sort of thing. And one of the things on the door seals of your cars as well, quite often you go to open your car and it gets stuck.
Yes.
If you get a bit of WD-40 or some silicone sealant type stuff, put it on a rag and put it around the rubber seals, that will help it sort of easily be released when we do get this cold weather.
Okay. Are you a fan of those sort of windscreen covers?
Yeah, I think it's very good. Very good idea to, put it over, make sure that you put it on properly, secured, because we often come out, if it's been a windy weather, they're all down the road somewhere, but make sure they're secured properly.
Okay, we're going to chat more in just a moment. Any questions, anything you'd like to say, please feel free. Guest in the studio is Rob Hurd. He is road safety consultant, founder of the Older Drivers Forum and former Hampshire police officer, as we talk driving in the winter and the snowy conditions. We're just talking about sort of that the sort of gears situation when you start skidding or if you do start to slide. Somebody just messaged in, what's the advice for driving automatics when it comes to sort of being in the wintry weather, Rob?
Yeah, again, select, set it into a set gear if necessary. If you are pulling away, rather than trying to pull away in the first, which would automatically maybe put it into second and use that as the gear to drive with as well.
Just use the override.
Yeah, and sometimes what I would say is a lot of cars have a speed version, an extra automatic speed, so you're more of a sport mode, that's the word. You could use that because what it does sometimes is hold your gear longer. So if you're coming down a hill, it will higher revs and it will hold that gear before it changes. Okay. So it's not about fast acceleration, it's about just holding gears longer.
Okay, all right, good advice. Wanted to move away and talk about some other issues now, because I know you've been campaigning about making sure your eyes are checked and that you have the right glasses if you need them for driving, because this has been a massive problem, hasn't it, and continues to do so.
It is, and unfortunately, 90% of driving is visual. We need to be able to see the hazards. Our current regulations is that you've got to be able to read a number plate at 20 metres, past what we call the 612 on the Snellen scale, which is the halfway down on the chart from an optometrist, and have an adequate field of vision, which is basically 120 degrees. Now, unfortunately, that's a self-certification a lot of the time. We're only ever checked legally when you do your driving test, or if the police suspect you've got got defective eyesight and they may stop you. But otherwise, throughout our whole driving career, it's self-certification. So what we're trying to say to people is eyesight is so important for driving. 10% of drivers on the road at any time, we estimate, would fail the eyesight test. That's 1 in 10 people.
Frightening, isn't it?
Yeah. So, and it's in a responsibility because a lot of people don't realise their sight's deteriorated.
Yeah, because it's so slow, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It gradually happens. We go and get a sight test and then suddenly they give you some glasses. You think, goodness me, I didn't realise it was so bad.
Yeah.
You know, it's like cataracts. People, once they've had a cataracts operation, are absolutely shocked about all the colours that they'd lost. So it's about making sure we have regular tests. We say every 2 years. That's what I would minimum. Now, it's not just good to be able to see, but what it is, an eyesight tests are also excellent at actually being able to pick up medical conditions early and allow them to be treated. And if they infect your eyes, it allows often them to be treated early, so you have a much longer chance of being able to drive much longer.
Yeah, so it's really, really worth thinking it, even if it's just sort of ringing a bell in your mind, thinking maybe I ought to get a sight check. I know you're going to be looking on doing stuff on the telly about this.
Yeah.
One thing you just told me about the amount of time it takes for your vision to return to normal after you've been dazzled by headlights.
Yes.
This is frightening.
Yeah, so at the age of 15, if you're blinded by a set of headlight, that glare feeling, it will take you up to about 2 seconds to see normal. But at the age of 65, it can take up to 9 seconds. And that's because what we call the rods and cones in our eyes, they're like little muscles. And as we get older, anything starts to get slower reactions on it. And that's what's happening with our eyes as well. So that's why as we age, many of us will avoid driving at night, which is fine and a sensible thing to do, you know, but again, make sure you get your sight checked with an optometrist.
What would you like to see happen? Enforced eye tests over a certain age? How would it
so
evolve?
I sit on the National Older Drivers Task Force advising the government, and a report we did back in November 2021 was that at the age of 70, we should have compulsory eyesight testing. But personally, I believe that any age, you know, from licence application, and I feel every 10 years when we renew our photocard driving licences, we should be required to have a proper eyesight test with an optometrist, because the 20-metre number plate test is antiquated.
That's all you get, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, and that was brought in about the 60s, and it was some academics who thought, that looks about right.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of research behind the necessity of that. So what we need to do is review what a standard should look like, looking not only at acuity, that ability to see distance, our peripheral vision, because that's essential for us to see sudden things coming from the side, but also our contrast sensitivity, that ability how quick our eyes can react to light and dark. Now, it's not just driving at night. In a summer conditions and we suddenly go in shady areas, or suddenly in this sort of weather where we're suddenly in a little bit darker with the snow and things like that, it can take our eyes, or we're blinded by, if it's a lot of snow, bright light coming into us from that.
Yeah, I wear glasses for driving, and at dusk it is the worst time for me because you've got that sort of contrast of the light and the dark and the street lights coming on as well. If you do need glasses, if you wear glasses for driving, I've often seen this sort of yellow filters people have on glasses.
Yeah.
What do they do?
Yeah, so some people would decide to wear these sort of yellow filters on their glasses when driving. Now, it can help. It can highlight things. It makes things a bit brighter. But with it, it will dull colours. So if you're coming up to a set of traffic lights, the red, green and amber will look pretty much the same colour.
Right.
So just have to be extremely aware of where you might come down and think that's a green light when it's actually a red light.
Okay, but not the non-reflective coatings are quite good,
Yeah,
though,
very
are
good
they?
idea, because it gets rid of that glare, and if we get reflections coming off with screens and various different things, it's a good idea to do.
Excellent. Rob, before you go, just a few quick points on these LED lights. I know have been massively in the news over the last few weeks. I've spotted something this morning as well when I was driving in, and it was like a strip LED front light, and you see them on the back as well. I mean, these don't help really, do they?
No. And I mean, if you think about the lights we used to have, I mean, we've come a long way from what looked like almost like a candlelight and you could hardly see anything. And now we're into these extremely bright neon lights, which I'm afraid a lot of people, you're not alone, are feeling this is an issue. And in fact, there's a national body actually looking at it at the moment and coming up with set standards of where we should go, because I think we've gone too far.
Yeah.
They're too bright. And like you were saying earlier, it's one of those situations where you can't always judge distance with them as well if they're too bright. Now, if you are blinded by a set of headlights when driving, one of the things we would say, if you think it's a bright light coming towards you, you know it's going to get that glare, maybe just as the car's coming towards you and it's likely to happen, look to the left-hand side, maybe follow follow that white line, follow the curb line. As soon as the vehicle's gone back, look back in. That way you're limiting being blinded by those headlights.
OK, good advice. And when can we see you on the telly, Rob?
Well, I'm doing some filming with BBC Morning Live. I've just done some filming on Monday with BBC The One Show. So they're likely to come out next week, I think.
Excellent. We will look forward to it. Rob, thank you so much for your time. Really good to talk to you, and safe driving.